What's going on, everybody? Good morning.
How are you now?
That is Theo Malone.
Big shoes to fill today.
Hooksy is not here. He is out doing...
Getting tested for encephalitis?
He might be. He might be, Theo. I don't know.
I don't even know what encephalitis is.
Is it even a real thing? Did you
I
just
think so.
Did you just make that up?
No, that was clepentitis.
Oh.
Encephalitis, I think, is real.
Yeah,
I just
okay.
am not studied up on all my medical terms to tell you exactly what it is.
Fair enough. How's it going, everybody?
You got that one follower that's pretty smart, Claire. She probably knows what that is.
That's my sister.
I know it is. You guys have similar last names.
Yes. And what's up with you? How you doing?
I was fine. You know, I was telling JP down the hall this morning, it's March 26th.
Mm-hmm.
And walking out to my car this morning to take Xavier to school, and I about slipped on the ice on my driveway. I mean, that should not be happening this time of year.
Yeah, my windshield was covered in ice today.
And I mean, it's just that it was that little bit of glazing too. And, you know, I mean, you get up to be my age and, you know, your balance isn't quite the same. A guy like me goes down with a hip and knee, I'm not getting back up. And I'm going to have that, medical alert thing. Help, I've fallen, I can't get up.
Yeah.
Someone's going to be responded to me looking like Beetle Bailey after Sarge jumps up and down on him, all crumpled up in my own driveway.
I may not understand that reference.
Beetle Bailey was a comic strip in newspapers. He was this real lazy guy that always tried to get out of work in the Army. And he had this Sarge that was always angry and had a temper. And then when he would end up, you know, kind of tuning on him, Beetle Bailey was all kind of somebody. Is anybody logged in yet? They can help me out here.
I think Ernesto says
Ernesto's gonna know who Beetle Bailey is.
Well, he says you need to call Dane for the slip and fall.
Well, I would, but yeah, and I don't. You know, I mean, I don't even get the paper anymore. You know, most people just get their news on their phones. But yeah. You have to Google Sarge Beetle Bailey.
Okay.
He's just kind of trampled in all of those comic strips. And you, things going good?
Yeah, everything is really good.
Other than your bracket?
My bracket is awful.
You never take a school that is named after a small town in Nebraska.
Princeton?
Auburn?
I took Auburn all day.
I know you did.
You knew that. Yeah. Yeah. What else? Oakland? Is there an Oakland?
There is. It's just north of Fremont.
Okay. Somebody in Fremont, I read today, had $1 million lottery ticket. So did you buy one in Fremont by chance?
That would not be me.
Damn.
Just a $1 million?
Mm-hmm.
Because like that Nebraska thing is like up to $800 million.
The pick 5 or the pick 4 or
whatever it is.
Ooh. I've been wondering if I should start playing the lottery.
You know, if you're going to rely on that probably as a source of income, the odds are not in your favor.
It's not a source of income. It's just, it's more of like a I want my life to change.
Sure.
You know.
Well, a lot of people made a big fuss. I think it was like 10 or 15 years ago when Shaquille O'Neal bought like $25,000 worth of lottery tickets. And there were people screaming, well, that's not fair, blah, 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 this and that. And, you know, if you have the money to go buy those tickets and you want to, fine.
Did he win? Do you know?
No. So, I mean, you know, he dumped in $25,000 more to help pave the highway. So just let him.
Ernesto says he does know Beetle Bailey.
There you go.
And I looked it up. I saw what it is. I don't recognize it. No, it's been a while since I've read the comics.
If you're going to read comics, though, I think you've got a pretty good sense of humor. You have to read The Far Side by Gary Larson.
Okay. All right. We're going to start the show. We got Robin coming up at 10:05. We got Bryan Munson after that. And there's a lot of stories I want to get to as well.
All right.
All right. Sit tight for me.
This is the Morning Hookup on KFOR.
Welcome into the Morning Hookup. Happy Tuesday. What's going on? Bill Hooks is gone today. I'm sure he's out driving around listening to us right now. So he is gone. My name is Will Wilson. and I have Matthew Malone with me today. What's going on?
Hey, not a lot. We were just making a comment that it just does not feel like spring here. I mean, we got a little bit spoiled in February with some 70-degree weather, and it is 26 with a brisk breeze outside.
Yeah, I thought the beaver said it was spring.
I think it's a possum.
The possum said it was
Yes.
spring. That's a joke. Yeah, I woke up. There was ice all over my windshield. I'm like, what is going on?
It is.
You almost fell on your butt
I did.
today?
I did. You know, being the senior citizen that I am, I probably should have just called the nursing home van to pick me up and bring me to the station today, but I braved it.
Insurance covers that.
It does.
Yeah. Well, welcome into the show. Happy Tuesday. Hope everything is going okay with you. Hope you're safe out there. Bill is listening. He just said just left and taken his wife home. So that's what he's doing, the chauffeur business today.
Good. So hope everything's doing good there in the Hooks household.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Coming up, we have Robin Washut here in about 5 minutes. We'll talk Nebraska basketball. The season is over. We've already had a few people enter the portal.
Yeah, some expected, some not.
Some not. We'll talk to him about that. We'll talk about the tournament, what he thought about it. So that's coming up at 10:05. We have Bryan Munson coming up after that. There's a lot of news going around. A lot of visitors canceling visits, decommitting that have official visits with Nebraska. So that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk to him about that. I got some stories to get to. The NFL, big news out of the NFL this morning. The owners approved the new kickoff rule. There's going to be a new kickoff rule coming up this next season.
I haven't heard that yet.
Yes.
I would look it up on my phone, but
I
can't really touch my phone right now.
You are using your phone.
So I'm doing this, no notes.
I got it.
This is going to be from the cuff for 1 hour.
I will.
Thank goodness we have 2 interviews. Because you cannot rely on me for any news or knowledge of any sort.
It's all up here.
It is.
It's all up here.
But after a while, people don't want to keep talking about 1994 Husker football.
Did you happen to watch any women's basketball last night? I
thumbed through a couple of the games for a little while. I think we had Notre Dame was playing. I watched a little bit of that.
Did you? Apparently, there's some news coming out of that game. Apparently, the refs were something else in that game.
The officiating, like all over, it seems to be garnering more news lately.
Well, did you see over the weekend, specifically in the women's tournament, there was a ref scheduled to officiate a game.
Right.
And they pulled her.
It was the Charlotte game.
Yes.
And they didn't realize until halftime that she had a master's degree from Charlotte.
How do you not know?
Right. And then you happen to stumble upon that. You hadn't found that all week after the draws were made, but in the 20 or the 45 minutes of the first half, you then discover it and then yank her at halftime.
Yeah. Where did you get where did you spend time in college at?
You about said degree, didn't you?
Well,
I went to a couple different places. I went downtown here and also out to UNK.
Well, I wonder if, like, say you said UNK.
Yes.
Like, what if you were to ref a UNK game? Would you be in favor of the Lopes?
No. I mean, I get called to call a game and you do a job, but though what if it is a 50-50 call?
Who are you going to go with?
Right.
Yeah.
I thankfully don't have to umpire or ref at that level to worry about it. This is more, we're talking 8-year-old T-ball or something. But for her, how would that go in a 50-50 call? Mm-hmm. But the optics of having to do that at halftime, especially then you have to tell the coaches and they're like, well, and then instead of, you always have the official on standby. Mm-hmm. They didn't even use the official on standby. They grabbed somebody totally different.
Really?
It was really bizarre.
Interesting. I wonder if she gets paid for the full game. She should, because it's not her fault that she was out there.
Well, I think that they're asked to disclose connections to any school, and she failed to disclose the master's degree from Charlotte. So
that's a little fishy.
Right.
I'm surprised there's not background checks on all of these people.
Right.
But
I think going back, they didn't really find, that there was, some blatant blown calls or anything like that. You would expect that in a Husker game.
Well, she got the afternoon off, which was nice. So
yeah.
All right, let's get Robin on the phone here.
All right. For those of you just tuning in, that's actual dial tone here.
Yeah, we're
on live radio.
We are cold. We haven't done this in a while.
No, I feel like we're the Jerky Boys or something here.
You have to explain that later.
Yeah, it's 90s comedy reference.
Hello.
Robin, good morning. We are live on the air. It's Will and Matthew Malone in. Hooks is gone today. Can you believe that?
Oh, weird. Going on another gallivanting vacation right now.
Probably. He's probably on his way to Paris or something. But
Well, he's got to
Yeah,
spend those
take the
frequent
jet.
flyer miles somewhere.
he doesn't have freaking flyer miles. He has his own jet.
Yeah, private jet.
Speaking
Hooks.
of traveling, Robin, how was your time in Memphis?
It was good. Food was really good. The time leading up to the game and the first 10 minutes or so of the game were really good, and then obviously things went south quickly, but made the most of it.
Good. We're gonna get to the game in a second. I did hear a rumor that the beers were super tall. The cups that the beers were coming in were very big.
Well, it depended on what you ordered. They had big beers. 16-ounce beers are like 32-ounce beers. So if you wanted a big one, and most people did, you could choose. And so it was kind of a choose your own adventure type situation.
Well, Robin, wanted to I guess dive in and talk a little bit about the game. Obviously, in the manner in which the season ended, kind of disappointment. There was the hoopla of finally being able to get over that NCAA tournament hump. A lot was said that maybe this is the team to do it, because we saw what this team was capable of at certain points during the season. Running into the A&M team, which we all thought going in was terrible shooting. So hey, if we can put a body on someone to box out, maybe this would be our game. But to an extent, I think, like myself and maybe some other fans too, that maybe we got exposed to an extent. They totally took rink out of the game, and we got out physical basically in that backcourt. Is that going to be something, do you think, that needs to be addressed, or was it just a wrong style of matchup, or how do you make of kind of what we didn't have going into that final game?
Well, the advantage A&M had in the paint and on the boards was no surprise. They're the best offensive rebounding team in the nation for a reason, and have bigger, stronger athletes than Nebraska does. So that part of it, was to be expected. But when you pair them shooting the way that they did, that's borderline unstoppable. The way that A&M played that night, they probably could have beat anybody in the tournament, maybe outside of UConn, just because of how physical they are, how well they rebound. And then when they make 13 3-pointers and basically go shot for shot against Nebraska with the way that they started, that was as impressive of a performance as you could possibly imagine. So, they're a hot team, and the perception of them, I think a lot of it came from their overall body of work over the course of the season. But over the last month of the season, they're a completely different team. They changed up their starting lineup. Guys are playing more minutes than maybe they were early in the year, and I'd say probably over the last 6 or 7 games leading into that offense had picked up significantly to where they had been a good shooting team. I think, going into that game, it was kind of hard to decipher if maybe that was just kind of a brief hot streak, or if they had really turned the corner. Well, their play against Houston, I think, kind of answered that question, where Houston is arguably the best defensive team in all of college basketball. And, A&M had every opportunity to win that game. So Nebraska, unfortunately, just kind of ran into a buzzsaw. And yeah, they got exposed in some areas, and were exploited in just some physicality matchups. But the way A&M was playing, they were going to do that to a lot of teams. So I think the biggest thing for Nebraska is, if they want to be able to compete on that stage, they're going to play teams like that. They're going to play big, strong, physical, fast, athletic teams, and they got to be able to match it. And I think you look at that, just the personnel, Jawan Gary was kind of like the only guy that looked like, he was on that same athletic level as the majority of A&M's guys. So how they address that going forward, I think you just need bigger, stronger athletes. They need better rim protectors. You need better defensive rebounders, especially with losing Josiah. And then who knows what's going to happen with Blaze Cada. I think that's probably two priorities right there, just to get bigger, stronger, more athletic, especially in the front court.
We're talking to Robin Washut. Robin, talk about the atmosphere. I mean, it was hard to kind of tell because we weren't there, but man, it looked like it was just all Nebraska fans. And Hooks was saying how, it was just a crazy environment because everybody was standing. Talk about the environment.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was a Nebraska home game. I'd say the split was at minimum 80-20 and maybe even closer to 90-10, to where it was electric from the start. The fans were absolutely dialed in. Just had the whole setting of what should have been a really special night for the program. And Nebraska kind of answered that call to start the way they were shooting. Casey hits his first 3 threes, and the crowd is absolutely dialed in, going crazy. Then Wade Taylor would come down the court and knock down a 25-foot three of his own and just go shot for shot with them. And that was probably as impressive as anything, is just the way mentally A&M handled that situation. You compare how Indiana handled it compared to how A&M handled it. The two polar opposites, to where Texas A&M was not flustered at all by that setting. And I think that shows that they got a pretty strong mental makeup in that group. And Wade Taylor was a big part of that, because if he doesn't make the shots that he does early, Nebraska had the opportunity to blow the doors off that thing right out of the gate. So again, it was just a really difficult matchup in a lot of ways. That A&M not just had the size and athletes, but they had kind of a bunch of dogs on their team that were not intimidated by what was a pretty incredible atmosphere.
Robin, as soon as that game ended, I kind of feel like I'm maybe that character on Friday Night Lights or something like that, where I go in and I start taking the names off the board of everyone leaving and start turning the page towards next year. Yesterday, obviously the portal opened for college basketball. We had a name that we kind of thought was probably going to happen with Ramel Lloyd. He redshirted a couple years ago and didn't see any action this year. And then we also, what I would consider, to the average fan, kind of a surprise was Eli Rice leaving as well. I know you talked maybe, there's a few names we do or don't know. I want to think that Blaze was held out once he got healthy just to preserve his red shirt. I think he has one available. But now with the signing class we do have 3 scholarships open. And I know you hear some names being tossed around already, whether it's the big guy from Michigan. I don't know if we'd have a chance with the guy from Rutgers at all or not. But and then also the fiddler guy from UNO. First, can you talk a little bit about was the Eli Rice transfer, as far as that being a surprise, and then maybe, who are some names on the short list that probably Fred's going to reach out to?
With Eli, I guess it was surprising just in the sense that they were really high on him, and he was playing decent minutes, upwards around 17 minutes a game, or maybe not that many, but a decent amount of minutes off the bench. And there's a lot of reason to think that he could develop into a nice player in the system, but that's kind of the reality of today's college basketball, where for one, kids don't want to wait around and develop and start actually playing starter minutes when they're a junior. Like, you can go find somewhere else and do that right away. But I think a lot of it is not just basketball. Like, I think a lot of people view this as purely on the court, reasonings. Like, he's kind of a kid that maybe he got homesick. Maybe he wanted to go back closer to Tennessee, and being down in Memphis maybe changed his viewpoint of where he wanted his career to go. I mean, you never know. So it's disappointing just because of the potential Eli Rice had, but it's just kind of part of the deal right now. Like the days of developing and building guys over 3 years, like that's kind of almost the rarity at this point. So disappointing, a bit surprising, but just kind of is what it is. And and then that opens up a spot for maybe potential for some more immediate impact guys that they can come in, some maybe older veterans that can help them in maybe some more specific areas next year. And right now, all the communication is just preliminary. Like, there's really not a lot of momentum behind anybody right now. And I think a lot of that is because they need to see what happens with the retention of their core rotation. They got to get official decisions from Bryce, Rink, Juwan, CJ, Marcus, go down the line before they really have a good idea of kind of what the key needs are. But I do think that they're going to try to throw their hat in the ring with some high level guys, and we'll kind of see where that goes. You mentioned a couple guys that have had communication so far. Corin Johnson kid, the guard from Washington, has had his name connected to Nebraska. Like I said, Terrace Reed from Michigan, and then Fiddler from UNO. So, there's been some initial contact, and, the portal opened last Monday. So before even the NCAA tournament happened, the portal was open, which was kind of a talk of coaches around the country, how that needs to change. It's like you're almost like punished for having successful seasons because you're trying to prepare for the NCAA tournament while also trying to get your roster lined up for next season, where teams that weren't as good as you get a jump on starting to rebuild for next year. So that's a whole nother conversation. But so they've been working the phones, talking to people, reaching out to different, players and agents and all that sort of stuff to just kind of get a feel for the landscape. But I don't expect any real movement as far as additions to happen until things get a little more settled with their roster, as far as returning players go.
Robin, let's assume that all those guys come back. Jamarcus comes back. After watching him in the main point guard role all season, do you think he would be better off on the wing and bringing in a true point guard, or do you think he's settling into that point guard role and he can continue that? Which one do you think would be better?
He can do both. He can play on the ball or off the ball. They've spent a lot of time trying to turn him into a point guard, so I don't know if you just completely abandon that, but I think you can also have the luxury of playing him off the ball a little bit more, because if you get Bryce Williams back, he can be one of your primary point guards. You have Aaron Eulis back in the fold, and he was recruited here last year to be one of your primary point guards. I think that those three guys right there, that's a pretty good, primary ball handler rotation right there. That again would allow, especially Bryce and Jamarcus to be able to maybe play a little bit more too in certain lineups. So, again, we'll see. A lot of it just depends on who comes back. If Bryce, for whatever reason, moves on, then that conversation changes in a big way. If Aaron Eulis, for whatever reason, isn't eligible as he's expected to be, then that changes the conversation. So that's kind of why I say, like, it's hard to project too far ahead until we know exactly what Nebraska's roster is going to look like, because those decisions and those situations are going to go such a long way in determining kind of like what the areas of priority are in terms of filling in needs in the portal.
The Eulis decision, that was a question. It sounds like that has not been made by the NCAA or whoever is. Have they even set a timeline, or are they going to be keeping us, on a string to where, we don't know if we need to go out and recruit for that position, or what's it looking like when we get some resolvement with that matter?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is, like the Iowa State guys in that investigation all got all their charges dropped. And so, maybe that happens with all the Iowa guys as well. I don't know. But either way, like the investigation, like once that's finalized, like the punishment is you lose a year of eligibility. So that would have been last season. So he's already kind of paid his dues if that ends up being the ruling, which has kind of been expected all along. If the charges are dropped, then the good news is he has a redshirt year. So he can just use last year as a redshirt and still have 2 seasons of eligibility remaining. So I don't think it's really much of a concern that he won't be eligible next season. But again, just the fact that there still is no finality on that, you can't really speak as if it's a done deal yet. But I do know that kind of the thought process of why he didn't play, even though no ruling had ever been set forth, no official punishment had ever been handed down by the NCAA, is because Nebraska wanted to just make sure that, regardless of the outcome now, he's paid his sentence, and he should be good to go no matter what next year.
Robin, Mom is commenting on the stream and asking if you went to the Rendezvous for ribs.
I did. We did go there. We went to Central Barbecue first, and then hit Rendezvous afterwards. And Rendezvous was fun. That's obviously the most famous place down there. But I will say, I did enjoy Central Barbecue a little bit better. It doesn't have the presentation as Rendezvous does, but I think the quality of food was slightly above.
Well, we're glad you enjoyed your trip, man. Too bad we couldn't get the win, but next season, if everything goes our way, it should be kind of the same year, right?
Yeah, I think the hope now is that this isn't going to be a once a decade thing where, Nebraska is going to be in a position as a program to where, like, making the tournament isn't going to be like this huge deal. And then once you get to the point that winning a game isn't going to be such a huge deal. It's got to be continued progress. They took a big step last year. They took an even bigger step this year, and now they're in position. If they can bring back the guys they expect to bring back and supplement it once again with even more improved talent around them, there's no reason why Nebraska can't get back to the big dance and win a game, if not more, next season.
Robin Washut with HuskerOnline.com. Robin, we appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the week.
Absolutely. You too, guys.
All right, see you, man. Yeah. There he is, Robin Washut, HuskerOnline.com. Every Tuesday, he joins the show. Coming up next, we'll keep the HuskerOnline.com train rolling. We have Bryan Munson joining the show next. We'll talk recruiting. There's a lot of news coming out with visits and decommitments, so we'll talk to him about that when we come back. Don't go away.
More next on the Morning Hookup on KFOR.
So you say, first thing you said when I came, I pulled all your music. Like, we're going to get into a second segment. We're not going to even have a single one of those, are we?
We'll get one after this.
One. Oh.
We'll get one. Well, we might get two in. Who knows? Yeah, that Euless stuff is so weird. Like, I almost think him sitting out this season might have been a suspension, like a ghost suspension. But
they couldn't play him because they didn't know.
Right.
And then if he was ruled ineligible, you would have forfeited every game that he played in.
Wow. Huh. Well, Robin made it sound like that he was like ready to go next season. Did you not get that?
Yeah, and it's weird because he does. I've told you Xavier and I will go early to watch warm-ups. We like doing that.
Yeah.
He wouldn't even warm up. Like, he was in. I mean, he had wind pants and stuff on.
But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he could practice. I think he practiced.
Maybe he could.
Yeah.
But like even warm-ups before games, you would see Ramel and Blaze out there a little bit at the end. I mean, those guys. Euless wouldn't even warm up.
There's some comments I wanted to get to. We had Ryan. He said, shout out. So he said, so without Hooksy, call this the first base team. Thew is solid. And then Ryan said, Thew is old enough to remember tackles in the NFL.
Yeah.
You are?
Tackles? Like the action and the position?
I can't wait to get to that story about the NFL. It's a big change. Huge.
It's going to be you're going to have to, you'll surprise me.
I will. It's like a new kickoff. Did you ever watch the XFL, how they kicked off?
A little bit.
That's exactly what they're going to be doing.
Really?
Yeah. So we'll talk about that coming up. Yeah, Bryan's coming up. Some good stuff. I've been following his tweets. What do you got? You got work today?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I work every day. Trains don't stop for the weather.
No, they don't.
I think sometime maybe we'll have to get the Quad City DJs for a rejoin.
Quad City DJs.
That throws you off?
Never heard of him.
What?
I'm sure Ernesto knows.
The Quad City DJs. Name of the song is "Come On, Ride That Train." Everybody. Yeah, you know it.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
It's a good song.
See, you know more about the 80s music than you do the 90s.
I've been really getting into the 90s, though. These last few years, I've been really getting into the 90s.
I only remember bits and pieces because I think I drank a lot during the 90s. So, I mean, it's spotty at best. Darn dance clubs anyway. They should be outlawed.
All right.
I think more and more Drew Carey is starting to look like Bubbles off of Trailer Park Boys.
That checks out. Welcome back into the morning hookup on KFOR. Will Wilson, Matthew Malone filling in today. Bill Hooks is gone. He will be back tomorrow. I'm actually going to be gone tomorrow as well. I got an early morning doctor's appointment, so Elijah will be in with you. Right now, we got Bryan Munson with HuskerOnline.com joining the show. Bryan, what's going on?
What's up? You guys taking some time off? You got a soccer tournament? What's the weather like?
The weather right now, well, we actually woke up to some little bit of snow and ice on the windshields today.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, the driveway is slick today.
Well, I think that they got a little bit of that yesterday. I think classes were actually called off at UNK yesterday.
Yeah, oh yeah, it snowed in the western part, so please don't take this as complaining too much. Just a little bit.
No, but I still a little late to see that kind of thing on the ground.
But that's what I'm saying.
It's all behind you by this point.
What's the weather like down there?
We have been. I tell you what, I live off of a lake, and it's a fairly good sized lake, like Lake McConaughey sized. It's a big lake. It's the hydroelectric lake feed into hydroelectric plant for Dallas. So it's a good sized lake, and we are just about ready to kind of the cup runneth over. We've had a very wet spring so far, which is great. It's unusual. But when Mother Nature turns off the water down here, it usually stays off till October. So we'll take it while we can get it. I'm sure it'll recede some. But yeah, I mean, it's at the top of retaining walls, all around the lake.
But you're not getting that lake effect snow, though, right?
What's the heck?
You don't get lake effect snow off of that lake like we do up here.
No, we don't. But it's unusual. Let's just put it that way. It's very unusual that kind of stuff happens down here.
Well, Bryan, we haven't talked to you since last Tuesday. Since then, we had the NCAA tournament start, Nebraska, Texas A&M. I guess we're going to have to wait another year for history.
Unfortunately, yes. What a fun group to watch. It's obviously I'm sure that Robin has been able to share his thoughts, and I've loved reading his. Look, I think everybody agrees that the writing is so much better when it's enjoyable, it's exciting, and you don't believe that things are headed towards some awful ending, and that things are going to be left in disarray, and the disillusioned fans, from last season, kind of just have to wait another year to see if it's going to get any better, and they're not going to get any happier about things through the portal. But it was a good feeling to at least know that Hoiberg is putting together a team. I liked the way that it's a very different team, with shooters from all spots. And it's something that took me a while to kind of get used to with watching it. But definitely a fun team to watch. It'll be interesting to see how next year's team kind of comes together. And Robin's stuff all year was on point. and really dig and get the updates from him, even as like you're sitting there during the game and seeing his tweets come through. It's it made the season much more enjoyable to see his excitement.
Bryan, you know what was really great this week is what wasn't in the news. And for the most part, I know it's not totally over, but I got to quit hearing the name Trev Alberts this week, which was great. Nebraska went out. They got a new athletic director in place. Obviously, a big part of Nebraska athletics is the football program. And one would imagine that any football coach is going to say the right thing and, oh, yeah, it's a great hire. Can't wait to get to work. But it just felt a little bit different with when Matt Rule was asked about the new athletic director, almost to a point to where maybe he kind of had a thumbs up approval and wrote off on that even before the announcement was made. Sounds like there might be a little prior relationship there, which I think bodes well, especially for the direction this football program wants to go.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I feel like, let's face the facts. Trev announced his departure 3:30ish on a Wednesday afternoon. By 10 o'clock the following Wednesday, they had a replacement. Nebraska wasn't going to let this one linger, but I think at the same time, I think it was understood that, you got to go back to Coach Rule and get his take on some things and understand some things. And maybe Dannon is a guy, I mean, obviously he's from the Midwest. He's done a great job, in places that he's gone to, even though he's only been at Washington for a short amount of time. Just a year? Is that right?
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, but I think it says a lot about where he's been and the things that he has done, and the fact, like I said, there's always a desire to kind of get back home, and I think that was a big thing. So whether or not he reached out to Matt or Matt reached out to him or Matt just kind of connected the two parties, I think it was although it's not being said too much in my mind, it kind of comes back to show how powerful Matt Rule is becoming there in the athletics department at Nebraska. This definitely has, some thumbprint of his on it. And I think Dannon is going to be an exceptional athletic director. How he follows things up with Trev, he's not going to do it 100% the way that Trev did. And I think some people are going to be relieved at that. I, for one, am going to be interested to watch it because Trev was very involved in recruiting. I mean, obviously sitting courtside with Raiola, he's out on the 50 talking to recruits. He's on the sidelines talking to recruits. The recruits would bring up talking to athletic director Trev Alberts during their visits. So that was a new one. That was absolutely a new one for me in covering this for 20 plus years. I'd never heard that before. So, I'll be very interested to see how things kind of are different now from where they were before. And obviously, like you said, I think that there seems to feel like there's some sort of a personal relationship there between Dan and Rule, and we'll see how that comes to help out Matt as he tries to get that program turned around and become bowl eligible for the first time in however long it's been. So I mean, I think it's time to start putting the correct pieces in place to try to get that program over the top to kind of match the success we're seeing in volleyball and the basketball teams, obviously, and what baseball's kind of doing right now too.
We're talking to Bryan Munson with HuskerOnline.com. Bryan, let's dive into the recruiting. There's two recruits that I'm very interested in. Linebacker Elijah Barnes, who is no longer visiting Alabama, and he has an official with Nebraska. And then there's another one kind of in the same position, Jamarian Parker, who decommitted from Arkansas, who has an official visit with Nebraska. I think it's just so interesting that we're seeing these guys who have official setup with Nebraska kind of changing things around on the other side. Talk about those two.
Yeah, no, Elijah Barnes is a Dallas Skyline guy, and it's been a while since I've said the word Skyline High School. When I moved down here in the late 90s, early 2000s, Skyline was the high school. I mean, you perennially had, 3, 4, 5 guys, going to these high level P5 kind of D1 guys. And, for the last 15 plus years, there hasn't been that kind of guy coming out of Skyline. Elijah Barnes is really, a difference maker when it comes to that, when it comes to putting Skyline back on the map. I think him kind of eliminating Alabama or him kind of turning away from Alabama is one thing. I think getting him out of Texas is still going to be a struggle. I think UT is still very much in the hunt there. And I think that's something that, my comment last night was, oh, interesting, like how does that guy kind of do that and kind of walk away from that? But yeah, I think getting him out of Texas is still going to be a challenge. But Jamarian Parker, interesting dude. I mean, Nebraska's had him on their radar now for a while. He visited Nebraska in January. He was blown away by the visit. He's had an official visit, set up to Nebraska now for weeks. He now walks away from an Arkansas commitment based on the running backs coach leaving Fayetteville to head down to Fort Worth to become the same position coach for TCU. And I think Nebraska and TCU now are going to be in a dogfight for Parker. But I think that, Nebraska is clearly trying to get their foot in the door in St. Louis. There's really not a better high school to do that at than at Cardinal Ritter College Prep. And Parker is an exceptional talent. I mean, that's an SEC style of running back. Obviously, Nebraska's room is in need of having a guy like that kind of get in there. I think he would be a great compliment. Also, this is what needs to be said too about, you lose Connor Booth a little bit, like, the fact that he's been on the commitment list now for a few months. He's had a wonderful winter. There's a lot of teams that are still in pursuit of him. They got a chance to see and hear about his performance down in San Antonio in January. But I think the compliment, obviously that's there between Booth and Parker is undeniable. I think that Jamarian's like an all-purpose back with a guy that can still do it on first and second. And I think Booth is really a guy that's a first and second that kind of gets lost on him, that he could be an all-purpose back. He can catch the football just as well. So nice little complementary pair of running backs potentially for Nebraska. So, and he comes in the big weekend that everybody should be circling right now is June 21st. Jack Lang is the last guy that we talked to, and I talked to him last night because he visited Nebraska on Sunday. But he set up his official visit to Nebraska that weekend, and he owed it to Nebraska. Nebraska, was the first school to offer him. But that 6'8", 275-pound offensive tackle from Eureka, Missouri, is going to be there that weekend, and that's going to be a massive weekend for Nebraska.
Brian, with the early signing date, it seems like, a lot of these kids take these officials during the summer. We're so used to them taking them, during a home game in the fall, but it's just been moved up. And I mean, I don't even know if they are allowed to, or if they do take any officials for the spring game, because I'm looking at like that defensive end down there from, I think Humboldt, Texas, when it goes to Summer Creek. He's only got one official left that he can take, and Nebraska's trying to get signed up for that one. Have we heard much about this spring game in the visitor list, or is that going to be mostly unofficials, and then we kind of will find out who that is maybe as we get a little bit closer? Have you heard much about April 27th yet?
No, there are several official visitors coming in that weekend. I mean, okay. It's a great segue. I mean, that's going to be the weekend that people can kind of go ahead and plan around. That's coming up, first for the big official visitors. You've got the number one athlete in the country, Michael Terry. We already talked about Elijah Barnes, the linebacker from Skyline, coming in. You have Marcus Garcia, another kid from down here in the Texas area, Denton Ryan. You have Nebraska's number one quarterback prospect, TJ Lateef, coming in that weekend. Emmanuel Choice, another kid from the Dallas area, from Lancaster, Texas, a big-time wide receiver. Seen him play multiple times. He is a fantastic talent. But I mean, they've also got, there's Terry Shelton, who is look, let me tell you something. Nebraska has got 3 wide receivers coming in that I'm just kind of fascinated by, because they kind of have this similar skill set. They kind of have the similar build, with Cortez Mills and Emmanuel Choice, and another new name people need to understand or need to know about is Terry Shelton from Irving Ranchview. These guys are all tremendous 50-50 guys. And they actually are. I would say the odds are way better on those types of opportunities being thrown. Their direction. They typically find ways to come down with the football. So both Choice and Shelton will be in there that weekend. And Michael Terry, he's a wide receiver. But that's a different dude. I mean, like I said, he's the number one athlete in the nation according to On3. So yeah, the spring game weekend will be a big official visitor weekend for Nebraska.
Well, Bryan, before we get you out of here, there's so much to follow, and you follow everything. What else do we need to know? What do you think we need to know before you get out of here?
Well, we're still going to be tracking some other visits and some other guys that are coming in here very quickly. I mean, you have like Noah Michael, the big time linebacker out of California. You've got Ryan Babbitts, who is an offensive lineman out of Buffalo, Minnesota, who picked up an offer from Nebraska recently. He'll be up there in April. I think that there's going to be another date that people can kind of start figuring out. I don't have a lot of names to kind of go with it, but Malachi Goodman's coming in April 6th, and we're kind of hearing rumblings that they may be trying to pull together another junior day a few weeks ahead of the official visit date there later on in the month. So keep an eye on that April 6th day. We only know about Goodman right now, and Goodman's special. Oh my goodness. You want to talk about a guy whose offers are well beyond like what his ranking is? That's really, you circle and you can underline Malachi Goodman when it comes to that, with the offers from Alabama and Georgia and Nebraska and Michigan and so on. He's got them all, but he's only a 3-star guy.
Very good. Well, Bryan, we appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the nice weather down there, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Talk soon.
Thanks, Bryan. There he is, Bryan Munson with HuskerOnline.com. Let's take a break. Come back. I want to get to this new rule change in the NFL. The kickoffs are different. It's unlike anything you've ever seen in the NFL. We'll talk about it when we come back.
More next on the Morning Hookup on KFOR.
You've seen dodgeball, right?
Of course.
Do you know what would make kickoffs great?
Catching a wrench in the face?
You blindfold both teams.
That would be funny. I wonder.
I don't know how you catch it though.
I was going to say, even
maybe
the
you just give the
returner?
ball carrier the ball at the goal line.
Well, so that
and
would,
the defense gets to start it. I don't know. Do something.
If the returner didn't have a blindfold and everybody else had a blindfold, it would do what the NFL wants. The NFL wants to get more returns.
See, I thought that they don't like the touchbacks, huh?
No, they don't.
Well, because I know they're trying to avoid the collisions, because the special teams collisions are the most violent thing in their sport, they've stated.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Isn't that why you watch any sport, is for collisions?
Well, especially football.
Football, hockey, NASCAR, you watch it for the collisions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Need more collisions.
That's a dangerous.
Just to have that Bateman come on. Yeah, Cotton, a bold move. He's not going to be able to see. I mean, that would be worth it right there on the Ocho.
Well, I think this new kickoff rule is going to be like watching something on the Ocho. I can't wait because you have no clue what I'm talking about.
I like surprises.
I wanted to get to the Shohei Ohtani story. And then there's a story about Deion Sanders I wanted to get to as well. So that's all coming up.
Him or his kid?
His players.
Okay.
And him. I think you and Ernesto would get along very well. He says, I'm teaching Will. I live in the 80s.
Well, if you ask my wife, I've never left it.
No, I can tell. Justin, do you have to spin around the football 3 times now prior to kicking it?
Yeah. Yes.
Like backyard football?
Well, like that in between innings game down there, Haymarket Park, where you have to spin around your head on the bat and then run around. And some of them are all dizzy and they fall over.
By the way, I'm disappointed to hear you did not fill out a bracket.
It got on me so quick, and then you have these playing games, and I don't know. I looked at it and I'm like, I am so frustrated. I'm disappointed a little bit too, but at the same time, and I'm by no means encouraging anybody to do this. Please fill out brackets for everybody, especially the one that they do here. Fill out multiple ones. But for me this year, I sit back and I have no anxiety. I'm not having to worry about 15 seed East Windmill State University having to pull the upset to keep my bracket going. It's really stress free. I just sit back and I watch basketball. And kind of like what I told you too, a big part of this was the fact that Nebraska was in this tournament. I could have just seen myself doing something dumb. I know you can fill out multiple ones, but I would have had one bracket with Nebraska winning it all. I know my son did that on one of his brackets. You have to.
I made sure, like, when I filled the whole time I'm watching these games, I really told myself, don't freak out. Don't get mad. I mean, because my bracket is probably the worst in the country right now. And I got to admit, I'm not like terribly mad about it. Because last year I did really good. I won all my pools. I had UConn winning it. So, it's hard to go back to back.
And there's always one bracket I fill out where I always have all of the 1 and 2 seeds in the Elite 8.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that bracket would have been doing really well.
It's doing a lot of chalk.
That bracket would be doing really well.
A lot of chalk.
Yeah, but what happens? Creighton and Kansas ruin my bracket every year.
Hold that thought. Welcome back into the morning hookup. Thank you again to Bryan Munson with HuskerOnline.com for joining the show. I'm Will Wilson. I'm joined by Matthew Malone. We call him Thew Malone. Hooks is gone today. He'll be back tomorrow. I want to get to this story, this big story out of the NFL this morning. The owners voted this morning, on a new kickoff rule, and they have approved of it.
Was it unanimous?
It was not unanimous. It was, I got it right here. It was 29-3.
Pretty close.
The Raiders, 49ers, and Packers were the only ones who voted against this. Now, if you're wondering what's the new kickoff rule, what's the new rule? If you've ever watched the XFL, specifically this last season they have a different kickoff. Basically, what they do is the kicker, where what do they kick off from, the 25 or something like that? The kicker is all alone. There's no players next to the kicker. All the other players on the kickoff team are up ahead. Now, let me kind of explain this to you, okay? The kicker, like I said, will be by himself. It's set at the 35-yard line. And after kicking it, he won't be able to cross midfield until the ball is in play. The ball will be considered in play if the returner catches it, or if the ball hits the ground in the landing zone, or if the ball gets to the end zone, okay? Coverage team will be lined up together. The other 10 players on the kicking team will be lining up at the receiving team's 40-yard line, okay? Each player has to have at least 1 foot on the 40-yard line before the play can start. Also, the kicking team has to have 5 players on each side of the ball, so they won't, be able to load up to one side. That's how the kicking team will set up, okay? So they're on the other team's 40-yard line, and the kicker is way back on the 35.
Okay.
You following okay?
I am.
Okay. Here's the receiving team. Most of the receiving team will be at the 35-yard line. The receiving team has a 5-yard setup zone that runs from its own 30 to its 35-yard line. 7 players from the receiving team must have their foot on the 35-yard line. The receiving team can also have 2 more players who are in the setup zone, but who aren't touching the 35-yard line. Those 2 players will be lined up outside the hashes. Receiving team can have 2 returners. The receiving team can put 1 or 2 returners back to field the football. But if they decide to utilize just 1 returner, then the extra player will have to line up in the setup zone between the 30 and the 35-yard line. So that's how the new kickoff rule is going to be going.
Okay.
That's the new kickoff in the NFL. What a dramatic change.
I guess I have a big question for you here.
Okay.
How does the onside work?
It's a really good question. I don't know.
How would you do an onside kick if you needed to score twice in 2 minutes?
Yeah. And because a lot of times you line up like you're going to be kicking it full on the other side of the field, but a lot of times you could just quickly switch and kick an onside. That's gone.
Well, you said one team has to be at the 40 and the other 35, right?
Right.
And they can't move until it hits the ground. So you have to have a
Correct.
kicker that can kick it in the air and have it land between the 35 and 40 for an onside kick.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Or if they move back to where they were, you've tipped your hand off that they're going to kick an onside kick.
Yeah, I need to look into that because the way it seems like onside kicks are going to be gone.
So if you're down 9 points, you're hosed.
So the reason they're doing this is because they want to increase the number of returns.
I get that.
Okay. Because, I mean, I got to admit, as a fan watching football, I hate constantly seeing touchbacks.
Well, and that's happened because of the evolution of the human body.
Right.
I mean, 30 years ago, if a guy kicked it into the end zone, wow, he's got a booming foot. But now every team has a guy that can kick it out of the back of the end zone. Every team does.
There is also the new rule will also add 3 different types of touchbacks. And this is where things get kind of confusing. Touchback at the 40-yard line. If the kickoff doesn't make it past the return team's 20-yard line, then the ball is considered out of bounds, and the return team will get possession at its own 40-yard line. Touchback at the 30-yard line. If the ball is kicked into the end zone on the fly, then the receiving team gets a touchback at its own 30-yard line. They used to do the 25, right?
Was it I know college and pros, I want to say, was different. One was 20 and one was 25.
Okay.
But anyway, so what's to prevent you now from just taking the ball at the 30?
Yeah, good point. Touchback at the 20-yard line. If a ball hits the ground in the landing zone and then rolls into the end zone and doesn't get returned, then the touchback will only go out to the 20. Okay. That's so interesting. This is and then here we're talking about the onside kick.
Yes.
Under the new rule, onside kicks will only be allowed in the 4th quarter and only if a team is trailing. Also, the team that wants to attempt the onside kick will have to declare that it's trying it. This will eliminate the surprise onside kick. So if you're going to do the onside, you have to be like, hey, we're going to do the onside.
So Scott Frost can't just surprise someone mid-game.
That's right.
Okay.
He would be against this.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think? This is a big change. I'm really surprised that they're doing this.
I guess I'm willing to give that a try. If that thing, it's not like it passed by, 17-15 here.
Right.
Like, it was 29-3. So,
well, they were supposed to make the vote yesterday, and there was a lot of owners still kind of on the fence, so they pushed it back 24 hours. And
they maybe did some tweaking of the rule too, like with your fair catch, or on the 30, 20 stuff like that, and the 40 stuff like that, probably to, I don't know. You didn't want to make it probably advantageous to one side or the other, because I mean, you still want, the other team to still have the ability to do it. So
they're going to be starting this in the preseason. Okay, so if you have any, if you're curious, you better watch preseason, because they're going to be trying this, and I think it's going to be in the full season. I don't know if they're just testing it or not and see how it goes, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be this next full season. And the NFL also banned the controversial hip drop tackle. That was a big deal this last season. Thew, I don't know if you
the hip drop tackle.
Yeah, a lot of people got hurt.
That's different than the drop kick tackle.
I think so.
Okay,
the drop kick is that's not good. Let's see what else here. Shohei Ohtani spoke to the media yesterday. You've been following that story at all?
A little bit.
His interpreter apparently has been stealing millions of dollars from him to pay off gambling debts. And people have been, wondering if Shohei is the one that's been gambling and he's just trying to make his interpreter the fall guy. He spoke to the media and said that is not true. He admitted that his interpreter's been stealing from him, and he denies ever placing a bet. So I think Shohei's telling the truth on this one.
Well, I don't, as much money as that guy makes, I would start spending a lot of that money on Rosetta Stone, stuff like that, so he doesn't need the interpreter anymore.
Sure.
Casey learned English in a couple of years.
Yeah, he did.
Does all right for himself.
Well, Thew, thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening. Tomorrow I'll be out. Elijah will be in producing with Hooks. Enjoy your Tuesday. See you tomorrow.